Wednesday afternoon with the golf courses around, it gets hard. So, all right, my name's Brian Falvey. I'm with Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and working with AFCEA, put together this presentation on on-premise private cloud, which is kind of the wave of the future, and really a focus on how it relates to DCOI optimization. And so let's just dig right into it. And so first off, as many of you are aware, well, I like to walk too. So as many of you are aware, there was the directive that came out from Mr. Fanning there a few years ago, which basically said, hey, you've got to close a bunch of data centers. There's this whole consolidation effort, basically kind of instructing folks, go to the cloud, find some other solution. But really at its core, it was get out of the infrastructure business. Stop overspending money on infrastructure, right? And so they kind of came up with this idea that, infrastructure is a dirty word, and it was tied to this notion over here of, we can no longer afford the luxury of unconstrained IT expenses. That was right in the memo. That was a driving factor there. And they cited in the memo $8.3 billion spent on infrastructure and IT in 2015. So cost and infrastructure was in fact the business, and infrastructure is now kind of the dirty word in this business. However, infrastructure is at the core of making all of this work, right, of the capability. And so I just want to highlight something else. So as we've got this kind of mandate coming down from on top that says, hey, you got to get out of the infrastructure business, the same thing's going on at state and local governments. Okay, so here's the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We sat down with them last year, and they had formed a special office to consolidate all of their IT in the state. And it was this Executive Office of Technology, Services, and Security. And that group was formed, as I said, to consolidate everything. We had this meeting with them, and we said, what's your goal? What's your real goal? You want to consolidate. What does that mean? And they said, we have 6,000 servers in our infrastructure, and in the next 2 years, we're going to zero. We're getting rid of every single server. And for those of us who are in the know about how this stuff really works, that's just not going to happen. Right? You can't go to zero servers. You can't have no on-prem infrastructure. Right? But it begs the question, what does go to public cloud? What stays in private cloud? What stays on-prem? And they did at least have this foresight, that data-driven policymaking is key. You need to have policies, and you need to have data. You need to have a reason for workloads to go in one place and the other. So they're going through the same kind of hurdles. It came down from on high. Hey, you've got to make this change, just like the memo that's governing the Army today. And so this is my slide. That's my representative, IT manager, my CIO, whoever it is. But she's stuck in the middle of this conundrum of what we call management by magazine, okay? These are, the CEO of the company, the bigwig of wherever it is who says, geez, we better have a cloud strategy. You know what? I know what we're going to do. We're going to go to the cloud. I don't know what I'm talking about, but my teenage daughter told me the cloud is where it's at. It's where she puts all her pictures from her iPhone. So we better go for the cloud too, right? And you get this pressure of, hey, figure it out. Right? Then you've got these backdoor kind of shadow IT people, the smart people in your org who are swiping credit cards and putting workloads, it's the developers, those folks who are running out to the cloud behind your back anyway. And they're saying, I can't get the services I need from you, right? You're not good enough. Cloud's better for me. And you've got these people on top saying, get to the cloud now. And you're sitting there with this massive infrastructure, different apps, different workloads, different data on different devices, some on mainframes saying, how the hell do I comply with this? What am I going to do? I don't even know where to start. And so this is the conundrum of the day. And so let's say, for example, that you became one of these early adopters and you said, all right, I'm going to go to the cloud. And here you are, right? There it is. That's our vision of the cloud. We're out there. Life is good. I've run to the cloud. Things are going great, right? And then all of a sudden I find out all about the apps that don't really work in public cloud. They don't work well. And what about when I try to pull them back and I get hit with the egress charges and the costs go through the roof? So the early adopters, that term, is now replaced with what we call boomerangers, who are the people who early adopted and went, oh, you know what, and flipped around and said, I've got to pull things back to my on-prem infrastructure. So underlying all of this, right, the real motivation for this, again, getting kind of out of the infrastructure business, is this consumption idea. Public cloud, private cloud, whatever it is, cloud is really a word for consumption-based IT, right? You're utilizing resources at a rate that you want. You can throttle it up, you can throttle it down. It's tied to your actual utilization. And that's really where the industry is going, public, private, everywhere in the world. This is the trend. But it's an infrastructure story, right? We're always talking about infrastructure, consumption-based, or whether you buy it, CapEx, OpEx, but that's not really where the discussion rests. It starts here in the middle, and this happens to be the tenets of HPE strategy right now, and it's, everybody has a similar strategy. We're focused on hybrid IT, we're focused on intelligent edge, right? These are important pieces that we want to enable. But in the middle of it all, none of that means anything unless you're having a discussion about apps and data, workloads, right? Where do these things belong? What's the best fit for them? How do they affect your mission or your business or whatever you're doing? That's where the discussion rests, and you've got to take a hard look at that. And the reason we know this is a little story about our own experience at HPE. So we set out, over the last few years, we've kind of reorged the company. We sold off a few core kind of assets. Our HP, the printer and laptop folks, right? They're now HPI. We are HPE. So it's a separate company. Through that, we went through our own massive data center consolidation, right? We had to get our number of apps down, our infrastructure down. And the smart people who invent this stuff and make it sat in a room and said, this is where we think we're going to end up. We're going to go through this process. They put a plan together, and they said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to have 10% here, 10% is in private cloud, and then that 60 and 20 combined, about 80% of our workloads are going to go to some form of public cloud, whether it's straight public cloud or as a service, Office 365 or something like that. And they put the model together, and they put the plan together, and then they started to execute, like a lot of our boomerangers, okay? They started executing on this plan. This is where they ended up. Okay? So that 10% was going to stay local, 55% was in a private cloud environment. Yeah, 35% went to public cloud. Public cloud is not bad. It's not a dirty word. It's not, it's the right place for a lot of workloads. It makes a lot of sense. But what we find out is that there's a lot of reasons why things just don't go there, right? So what did happen? So this is kind of a little scale, public cloud on the right, on-prem, private cloud on the left. Okay, what are the difference? Well, for a private cloud experience, they're both scalable, they both have variable expense, they both simplify your IT operations, okay? So that's kind of, a wash. But then when you get into this implementation piece, right, think of those boomerangers, you're like, okay, let's take everything off to the cloud. Well, what about architectural choice, right? What about that chipset that's really important to my application or my security feature? What about data sovereignty? Okay, security, come on, security is massive, keeping something on-prem versus going to the cloud. Latency, how about the pipes? All right, I love to tell a story about, I met with a big university hospital, talked to them about latency and workloads and which workloads go where, and I started down the path of kind of being the smart guy, and the CIO stopped me and said, no, I got this. I know this all too well. In fact, we have already categorized all of our apps by mission criticality. And our tier 1, most critical applications, the ones that keep people alive in beds in this hospital, they're never leaving the building. I don't care if they are cloud purpose, cloud whatever, they're never leaving. That's the end of the story. So there's always going to be a reason beyond, these basic reasons to go to the cloud, and certainly beyond cost, okay? A lot of people think, oh, cloud's going to be cheaper, but the reality is private cloud, here's an example we put together. It's less than half the cost to run a private cloud in a lot of cases, okay? So yeah, cost matters, right? It does matter, and it might be the reason you go. It also might be the reason you come back, incidentally. But there's these other factors that you're going to find out when you examine your mission and your workloads and your infrastructure and what's important to you, okay? These, we've kind of bucketed them into, mission, financial, technical, functional, but there's about 60 other reasons that we kind of categorize through what we learned. That these are the things that are going to drive your decisions. Remember I said data-driven policy making? This is the data, right? These are the reasons. When somebody says, go to the cloud, you can say, well, have you thought about the hosting costs? Have you thought about storage distribution? How about virtualization? What about this application tier, right? There's all of these things that get you smart, that you need to make the right decisions here, that figure out what is the right home for those workloads at the right time. So there's a lot that goes into this. You don't just run to the cloud. And what you'll end up with, regardless, is this unique mix that works for your mission, okay? Here's some examples from industry, banking, healthcare, utilities. They're all different. They all have different mixes, right? So it's your right mix. What works for you? And so they're all different, okay? But they're also all the same because they all end up needing private cloud. That's the message. That's the important piece. We didn't make this up. We learned it the hard way, right? We were expecting to, keep some basic on-prem infrastructure and then run off to public cloud. And we found out, oh man, private cloud is really important to the implementation of this. And our customers are finding this out, many of whom are adopting exactly this. So this is where the story starts. Apps and data, workloads, where do they go? Now that you know where they go, where they're best suited, where they, from a cost perspective and all of those other perspectives, now you know what you need from an infrastructure perspective. And a big part of that is going to be this private cloud piece. And so how do you build it? What is private cloud, right? There's like the word cloud years ago when everybody said we're going to the cloud, even 8 years ago, and it just was this euphemism for the end of the conversation, right? We're going to the cloud, right? And that was conversation over because nobody knew what the hell it was. Nobody could even ask an intelligent question about what it was because we were all afraid to sound like we didn't know it, right? But it didn't exist, right? So now there really is viable commercial cloud options out there, and there's going to be this local on-prem private cloud aspect of it. So let's take a look at kind of the benefits, some of the core reasons that private cloud is important. First is you're going to get the speed. You're going to get the same speed as a lot of folks say, I want to go to Amazon because if I need more capability, I need more capacity, I can just dial it up. As I use it, the capacity is elastic, it grows. You get the same thing, and we're going to go through it, but you get the same thing with a private cloud experience. So you get that public cloud experience on-prem, right? There's no loss there. ROI, so we call it return on investment. It's really, there is no investment. So very, very core in a true private cloud environment is you don't own the infrastructure. Right? You're taking the infrastructure as a service. You're paying for it on a consumption basis. So just like public cloud, but the infrastructure is, very importantly, is on your premises. So from a security standpoint, which is a vital part of that memo, it's behind your firewall. It's also behind your physical wall. So from a security standpoint, I think there's nothing better. There's no greater comfort than you can see the server and protect it yourself and know where the data is at all times, okay? And your staff, by the way, doesn't have to maintain it, which is really huge. So we're going to get into that too. And then finally, the big pressure in all of this is ultimately you've got to try to get workloads off to the public cloud. That might make a lot of sense. This is a nice staging area. So you've got your solution, right? From that memo comes down and the management by magazine, whatever it is that's pushing you in this direction. You've got your cloud solution, your on-prem private cloud. You're paying by the drink instead of investing in infrastructure. So you're complying, but it also gives you time to rationalize those applications, refactor applications, rewrite applications, whatever needs to be done to modernize applications and workloads to be able to be ported to and from private cloud, public cloud, okay? So you're kind of buying yourself time in the process as well. And so don't forget that memo. Here's 2 quotes from it. Unconstrained IT expenses, right? So you're going to save a ton of money through this process. But the flip side of that memo was, reducing the risk to the Army and the nation posed by cyber threats. And that's that firewall piece. So if you run out to a public cloud, you're adding risk to the environment versus keeping it behind your firewall, behind your physical wall. You're actually mitigating risk, and you have greater control. So on the cost side, right, when you really look at the economics of how this works, let's just compare it for the moment to your typical kind of infrastructure buy. And this is where it gets really fun. This is the rubber meets the road here. So this is your typical, look at that black line on the top, right? You want to buy some infrastructure, you go out, okay, I'm doing some planning, this is what I need, and you buy a bunch of infrastructure, and then you start using it. And you're underutilizing it for a while, and eventually you might end up using all that infrastructure, and the benefit you're getting from it might actually exceed what you paid for it eventually. Think about a cloud experience where as you use it, you're developing a benefit, and as you're using it, you're also generating cost, right? You don't have a big upfront investment. It's consumption-based. As you use it, just like the power in your house or the water in your house, you don't pay for it until you turn the faucet on. So I'm thirsty, I get a drink, right? I've got the benefit of the water, and I get a bill for the water I just used. At my house, I don't have a storage tank out in my backyard that's 40 feet high that holds, 10 million gallons that I pay for up front. I pay for the glass of water when I need it, right? That's what we're talking about here. And here's kind of the little deeper dive of the economics of this. Consider this graph, right? This is infrastructure spend on the left, right? This is what you're going to invest in your IT infrastructure, exactly what the memo is saying, hey, you've got to get out of this business. And down here is time. And right here, this star, this is our starting point. This is your utilization. This is what you need. This is what my mission, or whatever I'm supporting, this is what we need today. And you go out and you do your procurement. You get budget allocated, you put your RFI, your RFP, you go through the process, you go through the protest, you deal with all of that stuff, and ultimately you get something awarded and you deploy some infrastructure. Of course, given the process, the nature of the acquisition game, you don't want to go to that well and be always in an acquisition mode. So everybody overbuys infrastructure. So you buy a ton of infrastructure, even though you're here, you buy this because you're saying, geez, 3 years from now I'm going to need that much, I think, so I better get it today. I don't want to have to go to this well every 3 weeks. And what happens is your actual utilization ends up looking like this, that blue dotted line. You might have some peaks and troughs and whatever, but over time, this is your actual utilization. While you're doing that, right, you bought all this, okay? You only use these little red areas here, over provisioning. This is where you wasted a bunch of money. This is the data center optimization initiative and the memo we talked about, right? That directive. This is what we're trying to avoid. We're not trying to buy $8 billion in infrastructure when we only need this much. Get out of that game. Get out of that behavior. They're trying to force a change here. And so what happens is, much like everybody in industry does this, you end up over provisioning because you have this crystal ball that says, I think this is what I'm going to need 3 years from now, but you still end up with this. So many people do. Even with that crystal ball and all that extra infrastructure you bought, you run into this place where your needs actually exceeded the capacity that you bought. At some point that might happen. It happens all the time. In fact, 50% of the time in industry, they run into a point where they're just maxed out and they can't get new infrastructure in fast enough, and they've really kind of screwed the pooch. So the key here is if you go to a private cloud environment, right, where you're taking this as a service, on day one, okay, you're here, we put in this much infrastructure. Okay, and then together we're looking at utilization and saying, you think you need more, and we bump it up. And it's all part of one relationship. You go out and you procure this one contract, this one deal. This isn't a new buy because you're not buying anything. This is us as a cloud provider, for example, bringing in infrastructure on our dime, putting it in your environment, having it there ready for your mission to utilize it. As you utilize it, you get a bill, right? And as your utilization goes down, your bill goes down. But we maintain the infrastructure, and we're monitoring it and working it with you to make sure we're forecasting properly, and you never run out. It's like this. I liken it to your daughter turns 13, okay? And what do you do when your daughter turns 13? You have a birthday party, and of course you buy her a car, right? She's 13. 3 years from now, she's going to get her driver's license. So I better buy a car today. I'm going to buy a car today. I'm going to put it in my garage, and not only am I going to put it in the garage, but I'm going to turn it on, I'm going to run it, I'm going to refuel it, I'm going to fix any parts that break, and over those 3 years, I'm going to look at that car in the garage running, waiting for some opportunity to utilize it. I'm going to pay for insurance on it, right? Everything that goes with it. Oh, and by the way, if your car that you're relying on breaks and you need some cash to get it fixed, sorry, all your cash is tied up right here, right? You can't even execute on your mission because your dollars are tied up here. This is exactly, it's ludicrous, but this is basically the IT kind of habit. And so here's what it looks like, right? So in that capital buy scenario, another kind of great feature here, you buy this technology today, big chunk of it, and you just hold it out there, waiting for utilization. In the consumption-based scenario with a private cloud, you actually buy, today you don't buy, but we deploy what you need right down here with today's technology. All right? Then as your needs grow and as technology advances, as you add capacity to it, you're adding, next year we don't say we're going to add 2018 technology. We add the latest and greatest, then the latest and greatest. And it keeps moving on like that. So you always have current technology in your environment for no extra cost. And then even at some point, that 2018 technology, that gets refreshed out as well. And so you always have a modern environment, okay? And the other real important piece that you always have something that you want. You have what you need. It's your architecture. It's not, here's what we've got, pick an offering, dial up an environment, and start moving all your data over. It's what works for you, what's important to your mission. I mentioned it earlier. Maybe there's some chipset, maybe there's some security feature, maybe there's some kludgy thing about some really critical app in your world that it's got to run on some older server or something like that. Whatever it is, you get to dial up your infrastructure, right? It comes back to that idea of control, but you're still complying because your infrastructure is you're still taking it kind of by the drink on a consumption basis, right? You don't own it. You're not wasting the $8 billion in infrastructure. You don't have the car parked in the garage waiting for a driver. And so let's say you've got it deployed. Here's one of the most important parts of the whole thing. Just remember this. It comes with all sorts of support because it's not your infrastructure, right? It's yours. You can hug it all you want, but it's owned by us, and it's maintained by us. It's serviced by us. We do all the firmware upgrades, the patch fixes, everything that thing needs to be able to be up and running and at your service for your mission as you need it. And what does that mean? That means this. You get to free up your people from this infrastructure business, right? The people that you work hard to attract, train, retain, all of that, all right? You're very valuable people. You focus them now on the real mission, not supporting infrastructure. They're not in the infrastructure game. They're focused on the mission. Go have them work on apps that actually help the warfighter, right? Let's not have them worry about, is that patch done, right? That's the real important piece here. The human resources in the Army get pulled up out of this kind of trough and up to a higher level, doing higher level functions that are more, closely related to their core competency and, again, the criticality of the mission. And then the other piece is, okay, so you've got all this infrastructure out there, right? Somebody's maintaining it, you're putting it to use. How does the whole billing work? How do I pay for this? To be true on-prem private cloud, you've got to have a legitimate metering capability, right? So here we've got per gigabyte, per port, per blade, per VM. You can do it based on memory, per core. Whatever matters to your mission, it's very customizable, okay? You're going to need some amount of infrastructure, and you're going to want to pay for it on some utilization basis. Fully negotiable, can be worked out, whatever works for you, all right? And the data, we have the software and the tools, which are really important. None of this stuff works unless it's properly software defined. But you can pull the data out of the environment that says, and create actually a portal that you can look at, and you can monitor your utilization real time and see who's using it. And the key part about who's using it is you can then actually evolve into a show-back, charge-back structure. If you want to be a service provider to multiple users, multiple, commands or units or whatever it might be, right? You can actually serve them all and show them or charge them, as the case may be, for their actual utilization. So it really accelerates you into this service provider type business, right? So it comes into our portal. We generate the bill with lots of detail that shows you exactly what you've utilized. And important point here, actual utilization only. There's no egress charges. There's no other charges. There's nothing secret in here. It's egress only. Egress only. It's utilization only. So what did you actually use? And by the way, this is everything, all the way up to through the OS. Okay, so you only work on things above that. We take OS and below, and that can even be dialed in as well. But that's the real key to this thing, right? This is real. If it's not this, if it's not a meter, right? If we can't tell you exactly what you did and get charged for it on that basis, that's called a lease, okay? This is a cloud experience where you're getting billed on consumption just like you would in an Amazon or any other public cloud experience. So. And then here's the final thought on this. It's available through Chess. This isn't some future thing. This isn't what's coming next year. We actually worked with Chess and got it added to the ordering guide. Okay, so the ordering guide now says this, that under the leasing provision, it includes variable lease payments based on consumption or utilization. All right, so that's kind of shoehorned it into the Chess world, but they had the foresight to say, hey, this is important. This is what, Netcom's been asking for this. We just had a meeting with them, actually, and they said this is exactly the kind of solution we're going to start recommending. This is it, all right? And so it's available now. You can buy it today, procure it with no problem through Chess. And note this other important piece, it's got to be delivered to government-designated premises. So it's on your premise, and it's paid for on a consumption basis. So to kind of recap the whole thing, probably the big takeaways here are, question.
Was it available for closed-loop admin networks?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so it, oh, yeah, I kind of left that off. Good, thank you for bringing that up. I did blow by that. You back here on like this? Yeah, I have that asterisk up there. That's my own reminder to cover that, and I kind of blew it. So, so there are ways in dark sites, for example, that we don't need to actually tunnel into the infrastructure. So it can generate a report, You can pull it out, or by the way, the whole maintenance thing, if there's a, take this if nothing else. The whole thing's very customizable. And that's kind of the beauty of it, right? It's one of its great values. If you don't want bodies coming in, or certain, something, you can work that out too. But yeah, it can be done manually on site. We don't have to have connectivity out. It's not a requirement. It's a luxury, and for most places where that's okay. And by the way, it's not even sending out any real data. It's sending kind of, metadata, for lack of a better term, what was utilized. Yeah, that's all. So good question, though. I mean, it can work anywhere. So, and for any purpose, right? It could even be extended, by the way, to tactical, forward deployments as well, right, on a cloud basis. So, but I guess, that's the point here. First point, it's customizable. Right? It's custom. It's what you want. It's not go out to a catalog online, swipe your credit card, and try to find an environment that works for what you're trying to do. It's what do you need? Just you get the comfort of what you need on a consumption basis. And like I said, consumption based. Right? You're paying for it on utilization, and it's secure. Yeah. To modular data? Yes. Yeah. Here's the thing, right? Here's the secret sauce behind this. Last point there, security behind the firewall. It's a business model. That's kind of, I didn't talk in this whole thing about any particular server or storage or networking device or brand. Yeah, I work for Hewlett Packard Enterprise, sure. Do we deploy this to customers who say, I really like Cisco top-of-rack switching? I'm married to that. I need to have it, yeah. And you know what we do? We go buy Cisco top-of-rack switches, and we deploy them in that environment. So there's a ton of flexibility here. Again, the here's what you want piece is really important. What do you need? What does your mission need? What's important for your apps and workloads? What makes them work the best, right? Because at the end of the day, it's got to work, period. So that's the first piece, custom. Right? The second piece, again, that consumption-based piece, everything's metered, everything's utilization-based. You don't use it, you don't pay for it, right? You're now you're putting yourself squarely within the requirements of that memo. And the last piece is security, also vital requirement of that memo, right? It's behind your firewall, behind your physical wall, and it's dropped in the desert, whatever you want to do with your modular data center. If you want to put a parachute on it and drop it somewhere, go for it, okay? Whatever works for you. It can all be done on a consumption basis. So, okay? So that's the key. Any other questions? We good? So that's really it. That's the story. So like I said, if you have any questions, there's a lot of us around at our booth at HPE. And we're getting a lot of traction. Right now, as with so many technologies, it's really advancing in the commercial world. In the U.S., major corporations in the U.S., Ford and a lot of banks and things like that, they're making great use of this, and they're adopting this model. Trying to get government acquisition shift to a model like this is harder, but it's fueled by that memo that says "Thou shalt." Right, and we'll see how just how tight that stands up. But it does say "Thou shalt," so hopefully a lot of people will see the beauty of this. One other point on that: CapEx versus OpEx, color of money. That very often comes up. That matters a lot. It can go either way. And so the color of money is determined by the customer. So they can any customer can characterize this however they want. Very often under accounting standards, it comes down to language in the agreement. So something about control, there's actually a test. So if you write the agreement one way, it's CapEx. You write it another way, it's OpEx. So color of money within the government, same thing. Whatever you need it to be, whatever works, it can be done that way. On our end, you send you a bill, you send money, and it doesn't matter what you called it on your end. And it's always the customer's, it's laughing, but it's true. And what's really important is it's not our bailiwick to characterize that. It's always somebody's finance that gets comfortable with what the language says and characterizing it the right way. But complete flexibility on that as well. And it can be a mix of both. We've done that too. So, yeah. Yeah, sure. So, the biggest one that, DISA. So DISA, we provide a ton of services to DISA. That's basically on-prem private cloud. We deploy infrastructure to DISA data centers. All of the decks. What are the numbers in the U.S. and around the world? We're everywhere, right? So, they pay for it on a capacity basis. So, we've been doing that with DISA for 10 years. So. The services themselves, again, that's where, so DIS is in that business, right? They're in the service provider business. We've had a lot of luck with, and I'm not answering your question just yet, but with system integrators, right? Because that commercial kind of flexibility, that's going really well. And what's happening is we're finding that, end user customers who hire system integrators to run things programmatically for them really like under cost accounting, right? Okay, you can actually show exactly what the utilization was. So it's really valuable there. The other place, I'll say this because it's kind of fun. A few years ago, if you remember the C2S deal, anybody know that one? It was cloud, I forget what it was, but C2S, it was a cloud consumption services. It was our friends at the CIA actually did a big procurement for cloud services, and they competed. The big competitors out there. They ended up going with Amazon. And so you'll see that Amazon will say, they feature them by name as this is our customer. And you're thinking, wow, that AWS must be really secure, right? Those guys are using it. That makes a lot of sense. Not the case. They had Amazon build an instantiation of the AWS infrastructure on-prem at headquarters. So you can go there and see it. It's actually a big appendage sticking out of the back of the building. But they built it so it doesn't go out to the cloud at all. It's on-prem private cloud. That's exactly what it is, because that's how you make sure you're secure. That's what worked for them. They looked at it and said, we like Amazon, we like cloud, we like consumption. This is all really good. I want it right here, though. And that's the real value of this. It's the same principle holds up for everybody else. Everybody wants it here. Nobody wants to just be pumping stuff out to the cloud. So. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't think anybody's actually implemented it yet, but we're in. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
So the Army, 2016 implemented the Redstone on-prem cloud, the Army Product Cloud Enterprise 2 contract.
That's right.
So that was the first attempt to do an on-prem cloud. And how did that go for its Well, the problems they ran into was when they started to do their workload management and they began they didn't do the analysis up front, so it didn't work out very well. Now, the infrastructure deployment went fine, but the actual workload management piece of it caused a lot of problems. So they're trying to regroup and look at it.
It goes back to the beginning of the presentation, which is, yeah, we're going to do this cloud thing, and we're just going to start moving data over there, like my daughter's iPhone. All their pictures are in the cloud. We'll just do the same thing. It just doesn't work, right? We were snake bitten by that ourselves, right? So we're speaking with some road rash here. Wear a helmet, and it's real. So that's where cloud deployments fail. In fact, we actually last year HPE bought a company called Cloud Technology Partners. They're like the number 1 or 2 Amazon and public cloud consulting companies in the world. We bought them because their whole basis is they hardly had a sales team, because they would just sit there and wait. Amazon would go out or Microsoft sell somebody on, you got to, public cloud is where it's at. It's going to save you a bunch of money. It's going to be easy, simple. And people get hooked. They sign up and they start moving, and they find out all of those things. Oh, wait a minute. There's a whole lot of stuff that can't go or can't go yet, or whatever the case may be. These guys made a whole business on folks at Amazon calling them and saying, hey guys, we just signed up another customer and they're having trouble getting stuff over here. Can we start charging, so we can start charging them money? Can you help them accelerate it? And they send in CTP to teach them about all of these things. What are the data-driven reasons? Where do these workloads belong? Which ones need to be refactored, whatever it is? They will do that whole inventory, get your house in order to be cloud ready. And so we bought them knowing that the offshoot of being, kind of cloud ready and figuring this out is what I showed you. You're going to end up, whether you know it or not, you're going to end up with an on-prem, solution and an on-prem private cloud. And so we want to help people do that. There's a lot. We use the cloud, right? My phone's ringing here. Unfortunately, it's probably, an Outlook email message coming in from Office 365 that my company utilizes. That's public cloud, right? So it's not that it's bad. It's just that if you implement it, you're going to have an on-premise solution, So, what's that? Oh, licenses. Yeah, I guess I skipped over that too. You mentioned one of the important things. I guess in that over-provisioning piece, the car in the garage, really, really big piece that the government struggles with is licensing, right? So don't forget that. All of, when that car's sitting in the garage, you're also paying Oracle, for, I don't know why, but you are, right? So sorry, Oracle, if you're in the room, but you are. And, you cut all of that down. So you start taking down the over-provisioning costs, the capital that you're no longer outlaying, the tax dollars to hit that $8 billion number. You're taking that out. You're taking the IT operations out, all that staff that has to manage that infrastructure. You don't have to get rid of them. You repurpose them, put them to a better task, right? But you're taking that cost out of this, right? So that goes away, and then the licensing piece, all those other costs that come along with owning and maintaining that infrastructure, that all goes away as well. And so the savings just adds up, exponentially really fast. So, anything else? We good? Okay. All right. Thank you all. Appreciate it.